Greetings, folks. This is DC Investing. I've reached financial independence, and I'm talking about topics that may help others on their path to financial independence. And all throughout this year, I was trying a dividend arbitrage strategy by using a margin account, and I've done a few videos on my process, and I had gotten to the point where I had borrowed $200,000 and bought some oil pipeline stocks. The margin account was costing about 4.75% a year in interest, and on average, that would pay about 9%, a little bit above 9% of a dividend. And recently, I felt a little bit unsteady about my position, and there was kind of one position that was, it was the biggest position that I had. And I don't know if it was a premonition or some foreboding or something, but I decided to act on it because I remember earlier this year when all the pipeline stocks were really high. I'd seen them go up quite a bit, and I kind of had the thought, hey, now might be a good time to sell some of these. It was kind of like the end of January, and I was worried about paying taxes because not only do you have the capital gains taxes on these things, but you also, I've gotten a bunch of return of capital over the past couple of years on it, so that all turns into capital gains in the year that you sell, if you sell them. So I was sort of worried about the taxes, and I didn't end up selling. And then during that same time, there was a bunch of weird stuff that was going on with the COMEX, and a bunch of people were sending precious metals over to America. And I just kind of, the thoughts were that something was going on in the precious metal market. And I almost my, sold out of positions in the pipelines and bought more precious metals. And I wish I would have done that because that was the winning trade this year. I held on to my pipelines, and they have, paid the dividends this year. But all the precious metal stuff has just done so great. And I owned, maybe 100 grand worth of miners in my retirement account, and I put in like $50,000 or something in precious metals themselves. And both of those have done really well this year after really, being a laggard in previous years. So I was listening, and kind of had a premonition. And lately, I've been listening to all of the debt issues that are going on, because you have hedge funds that are and private credit that are getting really shaky. There's been a few funds that have collapsed, and you got the Japanese interest rate is going up, and there's the carry trade where a lot of people have borrowed in yen and then bought American assets and other assets around the world. And I watched last August when that kind of blew apart and really caused a big reversal, and kind of things are going up some more. So the precious metals really did a crescendo for a while, and they sold off, and then are kind of percolating up again. And I have to think that there's some real issues underlying in the finance markets that are going on right now. Just kind of I'm not an expert, but things look kind of wonky right now. We have Bitcoin that's been selling off. It's gone from like 120,000 down to about 80 something thousand. I am not a Bitcoiner. I own a tiny bit of it just to keep track of it. I had sold off some at the higher amounts. I think I have $50 invested now just so I can watch what it does. But usually if Bitcoin's selling off, that portends to other people either needing capital or issues going on, or it's just like everything seems a little shaky. We had Nvidia came out with their grandiose projections and good earnings, and they were up the next day, and then there was a big sell-off reversal that happened on those. And just so all around, I'm just kind of seeing some shakiness. And right now, this should be a time where the markets are all happy. People are buying stuff, getting ready for Christmas. There's usually the Santa Claus rally that happens through the end of the year. That's what should be happening, but things just kind of seem weak right now. And so, I kind of weighed my options and kind of had a feeling about one of these positions. It wasn't up, it wasn't down, but I just made the decision that I'm going to go with my premonition, and so I sold $93,000 worth of Western midstream stock that I had borrowed or bought on my margin interest account. So basically that takes my borrowing from $200,000, and after this last round of dividends, it just puts my total borrowing right just above $100,000. And that's important because I get an interest break on Robinhood if I have more than $100,000. So I think my borrowing right now is $100,004, which I'm going to have to keep above that amount. I'm going to have to watch the dividends that come in, and if they go above that amount or below that amount, I got to sell them out, take some cash out of the account so that I have the better interest rate. So that's kind of what I did. I reduced my position from $200,000 down to $100,000 of margin borrowing, and that's split across I think 4 different stocks. There's like Plains All America and Westlake Chemical, which hasn't done well. There's 2 others. There's DKL, and I think I own some BSM or something that I purchased. I did a recent video that showed that position. But basically, I'm at a financial position that, not having an extra 100 grand invested, it won't hurt me by selling out that position. I'll certainly be ticked off if that stock goes up. I'll question myself, but if markets really tanked, then that weakness runs against me, and so I just kind of lightened up a little bit. I think another thing I was considering is they say that margin borrowing right now is at a really high level. There's more margin loans out there than there ever have been in the past, and so that's worrisome because if something, if a sell-off happened as people got margin calls or started closing out their margin, then that could really cause kind of a spiral to happen. So I don't know, just in general, I had never been a person that borrowed much. All of the things that I obtained were always, I worked to earn the funding for it, put it into investments, and then just let the investments grow. So I don't know, I'm kind of talking about this because maybe the things that I do might make you think about some investment that you have if you're leveraged up. If we do get a big market crash, then a lot of these leveraged ETFs that are out there, or all the folks with margin, could really knock accounts down quickly. And so I still have a half of my margin account. I still have 100 grand worth of margin investing, which is a small percentage of my overall, investable assets. So that I could easily keep that debt going for quite a ways. I think I have like $300,000 worth of stock in that account. So there's 100,000 of margin on a $300,000 set of assets, which puts the total account value near 400,000. So I don't know. I just decided to act on that premonition. We'll see if that one's correct or not. But I sold out one of my positions, which means I had a gain in it. I did have a gain of $2,000 of a capital increase, and then dividends this year. The arbitrage, because I was getting paid about 9%, but the margin interest rate was only 4.5% or 4.75 or something. I made a few $1,000s this year just on the difference in the dividends. So overall, that's kind of like a $4,000 increase, I guess. Might have been 5,000 on this trade on margin. So this was money I borrowed, and I didn't work for it. So I made 4,000 to 5,000 using somebody else's money, and now my risk level is down. So I don't. If the market goes down, then my risk is reduced because I won't potentially lose out on that position. So I don't know. That's just what I'm doing right now in the market. I wanted to let you, as my subscribers, know. I'm grateful that you're all here, and don't know if anything that I'm doing might give you an idea or a thought or something for your own investments, but that's something that I felt some forebodings last week. This week's been Thanksgiving week, and everything's been kind of calm, and Western Midstream, it wasn't high, it wasn't low. It was kind of sitting right near its 50-day and 200-day moving averages. It has been lower over the past year when the market was kind of in the doldrums. It has been higher as well. So, I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see what it does from here. It's kind of percolated up a little bit this week, but we'll see if my premonition or foreboding was correct or not, and we'll watch what happens to this. So I do still own Western in my brokerage account outright. I have about the same amount of shares that I have purchased slowly over the years. So I still got a big position in it. I sold out my margin thing. So that's what I'm doing. Hopefully that helps some of you. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, and I'll keep you updated on what I'm doing with this margin account. We'll see you. Bye.